Ahead for us on this Friday, relief from rising prices. As inflation continues to spike here and around the country, we're going to be talking with one of the Republicans in the state legislature about his proposal to help ease the financial stress on New Yorkers. Plus, the snow troubles continue for more than a week and a half now since our last big storm. What's being done to get the streets fully cleared so people can park? And 45 years later, we'll look back at one of the worst storms, maybe the worst, to ever hit western New York. Memories of the blizzard of '77. Nothing like that in the forecast, thankfully. Good evening to you, everybody. Every single one of us has been dealing with the cost of rising inflation. The price you pay has been increasing at near record rates. And we got another signal today that costs continue to go up big time. One tool that measures inflation is called the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. It's a long name, but it's pretty simple. It looks at a lengthy list of items that we all have to buy, minus food and energy because they're so volatile. This inflation gauge is a favorite of the Fed, and it shows a 4.9% gain in December compared to a year ago. For perspective, that is the biggest monthly increase since September of 1983. So to combat that, you have some New York Republicans who want to drop the state sales tax on things like gasoline, some household products, and some other everyday items. The GOP's Inflation Relief and Consumer Assistance Plan would remove that sales tax for 2 years. Here's Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay from earlier this week.
Gas prices are up 50%. Energy prices are up 30%, and groceries are up 12%. Something has to be done.
And joining us live to talk more about that is Central New York Assemblyman Will Barclay. He is the leader of the Republicans in the state assembly, and he is the sponsor of this bill. It is great to have you here. I just looked up, today gas prices, because that really hits so many of us, and the increase has been so dramatic. In New York State, up 41% compared to a year ago. It's almost exactly $1 more a gallon. Every New Yorker being hit by these higher prices, also when it comes to food and so many other things. Can you just start by sort of giving us a brief overview of this plan that you and your colleagues put forward earlier this week and how this could help?
Yeah, well, it's very simple. Essentially, as you mentioned in your intro, it takes the sales tax off certain products like home products like paper towels, etc. Gas sales tax, the state sales tax off gas prices, and for out-of-home food products. So that's like ready-to-eat food. And that's just, some of the things you can take it off. But really, what you said, I don't think New Yorkers need to hear from the Fed or the federal government saying how much inflation's gone up. I think they know it. I mean, you go past any gas station, you see the huge increase, as you mentioned, in gasoline. I paid my home heating bill last week, and that was twice as much as it was last year. So you almost across all sectors of the economy, you're seeing these huge spikes in prices. And it's costing, for instance, last year, the increase in inflation cost a family of four $6,000 more in that year. So it's causing some real hardship for New Yorkers. And so what we're trying to do by cutting these sales taxes, what we can do on the state level, is to provide some immediate relief to those New Yorkers.
Mr. Minority Leader, a big question anytime you have a piece of legislation like this is how are you going to pay for it? I believe the cost of this would be about $2.5 billion a year. So 2 years, that's $5 billion total. Where do you find that money?
Well, that's maybe the good news. The state is in a very good, positive budgetary situation right now. So we could easily cut these taxes and not face any budget crisis. It's just a matter of priorities. The governor's introduced a $216 billion budget. So although we're talking a lot of money with $2.5 billion for this tax cut, but in the scheme of $216 billion, that's really just a drop in the bucket. And it would have such an impact, I think, on families in New York.
This isn't a new proposal. I know that you and other Republicans have been introducing this almost every year since 2012. Of course, we didn't have the inflation problem back then like we do now. I wonder if you're more optimistic that something like this may get through. And I wonder, have you had any conversations with the governor's office or Democrats in the majority to where you can actually kind of make progress on this as opposed to just, going out there and talking about it?
Yeah, well, first of all, although we've introduced this a number of years, this bill has changed because it is to try to cut sales tax as a result of inflation. In the past, we tried to take state sales tax on certain items to try to get more people to buy those items in New York State, which I still think is a good idea. But this one's really targeted at those products that people have to buy, like gas, that they're really hurting because of high prices because of inflation. So the bills are slightly different. And yes, we'll be reaching out to our counterparts across the aisle. Whether we can get it done, unfortunately, in New York, it's controlled a lot by downstate Democrats, and they're opposed to any tax cuts. In fact, even last year, they wanted to raise taxes. So we got our work cut out. But I think the populace in New York, the voters, want some relief. They understand it. I'm hearing from it in my office from people saying, what can you do about this? And so I hope there's enough political pressure that maybe we can, with the leadership of the governor, try to get these taxes cut and provide relief to New Yorkers.
If this doesn't go through, what are some other possibilities that you think could help address inflation in the state and the fact that so many families are kind of feeling this pinch right now? I know that there has been quite a bit of Republican support of what the governor announced in her budget proposal in terms of speeding up the implementation of the tax relief for kind of middle class families. Is that something you support? And do you see any other opportunities, for your party, which, as you mentioned, is out of power right now, to work with the governor and the Democrats?
Well, we certainly support any tax cuts. As you know, New York State is one of the highest tax states in the nation, whether it's income tax, whether it's sales tax, or whether it's property taxes. So anything that the Democrats propose to cut those taxes, including the governor, I would say I support, and I know my conference would support too. But there's a lot of things we can do that's kind of technical. For instance, we spend a lot of money on education, and I think everybody's happy about that. But we had a more equitable school aid formula. We might not have to spend as much money on schools, and we could provide immediate property tax relief that a lot of the school taxes. So that's kind of a technical thing. You have to get into the school aid formula and how to change it. But those little small things from a policy standpoint can make a big difference when it comes to spending. And as a result, if we lower the spending, then we don't have to tax as much in New York.
We know that inflation is one of the top issues facing New Yorkers and really all Americans right now, and other countries even. We'll continue to follow this. We really appreciate you coming on. Will Barclay is the State Assembly Minority Leader. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.